What's up, everybody? Welcome, you guys. It's water. What's up? What's up, everybody? Happy Saturday night. What's going on? We are live. What's going on? What's up, Rachel? What's up, Davey? How you doing? How you guys doing? Truency, good to see you, brother. How's everybody doing? Happy Saturday night. What's up to everyone on YouTube who's tuning in? Good to see you guys. We're gonna have an important discussion tonight. I think you guys are really gonna. Hey, Andrea, good to see you. Drive safe. Kate is awake. It's been forever. What's up, Crollo? Good to see you, man. Welcome. What's up, Frankie? Welcome, you guys. Happy Saturday night. Thanks to everyone who is joining me. I hope you guys are doing great wherever you are. Oh, man. So I'm excited about tonight's. Hey, Karen, good to see you. I know I'm going to have to keep interrupting and telling all my peoples I said hello. What's going on? Welcome. Bear with me, you guys. Bear with me. Hey, Honor Monkey. Good to see you. Welcome, you guys. Happy Saturday night. What's up? Maine is in the house. New England's in the house. Welcome, you guys. Welcome. So this has been on my mind so much recently, right? What it means to keep the faith. Now, there's been songs written about it. Some of them pretty good, actually. And there's a religious connotation to it. But in my understanding of the word faith, came here for healing and peace, hurting deeply over the children suffering. Jenny, I understand. And I think you're in the right place. Stick around. What I have to say may lend a little ease to your heartache. At least I hope so. That's why I'm going to say it. But, and it's more important than ever, you guys, to understand what it means to keep the faith, because people just throw that phrase around and they don't really understand it. You know who understood it? Jesus understood it. The Buddha understood it. 2-hour drive, you're locked in nice. All the great masters who came here to teach us, they understood what it meant to keep the faith, what it means to keep the faith, right? But I think that understanding has become very remedial in our society and in all the conveniences we have. The instant gratification that we are dealing with on a daily basis, the Nazarene and the Buddha, one and the same. Absolutely very, very similar spirits came here to teach us about ourselves, And keeping the faith, right? So you'll hear people say keeping the faith requires, that's right, CJ, you got it. There's a difference between keeping the faith, which is a belief, and a hope. Oftentimes a hope. And listen, hope is very important, and it's a beautiful emotion. I know it's a beautiful emotion because I've seen what it looks like frozen in water, and it's gorgeous. It's pretty. It's like this tattoo I have here, but not almost as pretty, right? Keeping the faith. I had someone say to me once, who was explaining this concept to me, God bless her soul. She said, Faust, hope is a beggar. And I said, man, is that true? Hope is a beggar, isn't it? Isn't it? Because hope implies that you are separate from what you want, what you think you need. People hope for a miracle. So you have this notion of keeping the faith, having hope, which, listen, I'm not telling anyone to lose hope. What I'm saying is hope can be a beggar and it can be a trap. And I'm going to tell you the difference in my understanding and in my experience of keeping the faith or believing and hoping and knowing or having knowledge, right? And this comes into the affirmations that we do every day. It comes into our belief systems, the thoughts that we're having every day, all day. Our subconscious thoughts are usually running the show. So we have to know what those are. I talk about them all the time because you can have a stray thought that's very affirmative, but if your predominant thoughts are this fucking sucks. I mean, I can't wait to get out of here. You know, if only this would change, then I could change. And, you know, if those are the underlying thoughts, that rogue thought that squeaked in there that was like, I'm going to do this, is not going to overcome those other thoughts, right? So just as an example, you know, you say something like, you know, thank you, God, for bringing success in my life. Now, that is a powerful thought. And if that thought is acted upon, and if you align with that thought in your words and your deeds, all of a sudden that goes out into the universe and that begins to change the reality that you're going to experience. Because you, my friends, are the creators of your reality, whether you want to admit it or not, for better or for worse. You are creating your experience and your reality in this life. This is a hard pill for most people to swallow because there's a lot of terribleness in the world. And that's the co-collective reality that we have created. And the only way we're going to change it is if we start changing ourselves, right? Hold on, I have a comment that says, hope for me has changed to an acronym, help other people evolve. I like that. James, I like that a lot, man. Thank you so much for sharing that. Help other people evolve. Hope. That's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing that, James. That's profound. That's a much better way of hoping, I think, than most people do. But so you could say something like, hold on, I got to get, oh, Crollo, thank you so much, man. That's so generous of you. Somebody just gave me a super tip on YouTube. Thank you so much, Crollo. That's so awesome. I appreciate that, man. Sorry, guys. So thank you, God, for bringing success in my life, right? If that thought is acted upon, right? And I'm not saying if you align with that thought and you begin to, you know, act on that thought, not in an attempt to produce a result, but knowing a result has already been produced, then the only thing left to do is thank God for what has already happened. That is true faith. That is knowing. That is the difference between hoping and believing and knowing. You know, one of the most famous people who ever truly knew was Jesus, right? What did Jesus do? He did all kinds of things. People wrote about him and they talked about, and that's because Jesus understood what he was, right? He had such clarity about who he was. It never entered into his mind, not for a single iota of a second, that what he had declared so might not happen. Do you understand? There was no hope needed. There wasn't even any faith needed, because Jesus's statement was a statement of gratitude for what he knew was already done. That is the conviction that Yeshua had when he performed his miracles. And believe it or not, miracles didn't stop 2,000 years ago. They're happening all over the world. And if you begin on a healing journey, you will witness them yourself. You will witness the impossible. And it won't be at the hands of one man. It will be at the hands of many, because we are all capable of these supernatural feats. You know, I'm in a community that, I mean, I just had Anita Morjani on my podcast. You tell me how a woman can go from organ failure in a coma, pronounced dead, to having a near-death experience, having to decide whether to come back into her body or not, you know, begrudgingly deciding, okay, fine, I'll do it. And then knowing that without another single treatment, any Western allopathic treatment, radiation, chemo, you name it, that she was going to get better. She knew that because she knew why she got sick. Now, if that is not a miracle, I don't know what is. That is physically impossible, but it's not, is it? Because that's what we're capable of. That's what Jesus told us. You too shall do these things. You are all capable, and we are all capable. And so the trap is getting caught up in believing and hoping instead of realizing that to know. If you ask me if I can get up right now, I'm not going to say I believe I can. You know, because why? Because I know I can get up. I don't have any doubt about it. And I can, right? And so this is a mindset switch from what most of us were indoctrinated with growing up. We're indoctrinated with basically everything backwards. We're indoctrinated with seeing is believing, and which is not true. you know, the entire materialist, reductionist mindset that we're, Darwin and I mean, we're literally taught that we're just these bodies, right? And we're so much more. This is the least of what we are. This is just the experience we're here to have, right? I mean, that's the truth. You know the saying, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. This isn't the beginning or the end of anything. This is just one of the many, many adventures that we will go on as souls. I mean, you have kids being born all around the world, more than ever, who have memories of their past lives. And those past lives are being validated. They're actually being validated. And there's books being written about them. Now, how can a 5-year-old remember names, addresses, where money is stashed in his old house where he used to live? And then it just so happens that that life was still so close on the heels of this one that they can validate that memory. Now, he has no way of knowing that. This is happening. And I think as we spiritually become more and more evolved, we will be able to retain more and more of the wisdom that we had from past lives. Right now, I think most people, and I think most of you will agree, can't fucking handle this life. We have enough trauma from this life. So imagine, if we were to have to take on the trauma from, I don't know, all 78 past lives. I mean, it would be a challenge. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think that's part of the recipe that we are here to experience. But, back to knowing, and there's a contradiction between knowing and believing. Because when you know something, you don't have to believe, right? Belief is remedial to knowledge. Knowledge leaves no doubt. Knowledge leaves no separation between you and that thing that you're going for. Jesus understood that. Buddha understood that. Every person who's ever created an outcome that should have been impossible by every means understands that. Every person who's had a near-death experience has a very good understanding of that, right? And you can begin to experience it too. What you can't experience is what you are not aware of. And if you're not aware that you are a little divine individuation of the Creator itself, how can you experience that divinity? You can be told about it. You can even believe it. But if you don't know it, it's hard to experience, right? Let me see, I missed a comment here. My son, at slightly over a year, remembered his grandmother that passed 2 months before he was born. He pointed definitively at her picture and stated Nanny. He said, I know her. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Brett. That's amazing, right? And I think because the earth is transitioning in such an incredible pace now, hopefully in time to keep us on this planet, more and more kids are being... I just had this incredible podcast with Mary Rodwell. Mary Rodwell works with children. She works with people who have had an abduction experience. Now, 75% of the people she works with, they don't claim to have been taken up into a ship. But they have, many of them families, many of them friends. They have collective shared dreams and memories that can be corroborated, that happened to them. And she documents all of this. Her work is legend in the UFO community. But I was just talking to her, and she was telling me how, she said she's British, and she's kind of like a spiritual David Icke, except with a very, very strong focus on metaphysical, extra-dimensional. She's amazing. But she said, Faust, I have an 8-year-old who told me that she remembers being an avian with an avian family, being blue, living in an avian world. And I was like, 8 years old? She's like, 8 years old. She's like, I have hundreds. And I'm like, how could my 8-year-old wouldn't even know what an avian was, let alone a blue avian and a family, like, I mean, unless they like locked the kid in the room from the time he was 2 and made him watch Gaia, how the hell? It's just not something most kids are going to speak out loud, let alone have knowledge of. Like, the future is very bright if we can take our sovereignty back from the governments and really the families that run the governments. If we can find a way to take our sovereignty, our power back, the whole world is going to change. Because then our friends won't have to meet with the most corrupt among us who have been put in charge as a reward for their corruption. Because that is, in fact, and indeed what has happened. The most corrupt people are rewarded with the highest office, especially in the United States of America. And if you don't know that, you haven't been watching my podcast long enough, because I do one special after the next on people like Bill Clinton and George Bush and Barack Obama and right down the line. They're all as criminal and crooked as, I mean, I shouldn't even say that. They're much, much worse than pretty much anyone in our prisons. That's how bad they are. They're guilty of every atrocity and crime. They're guilty of poisoning our youth. The Bush family is personally responsible for flooding the United States with drugs. Now, isn't that crazy how I just seamlessly transferred from spirituality to conspiracy? How does that happen? That always blows my mind. It's just so crazy, right? But you have to understand the wool that's been pulled over our eyes. And when you do, it's easy to talk about, because Americans particularly are completely propagandized as to what has happened in our country and what we're about. Americans think we've been spreading democracy. America has not made the world a better place, okay? Not in any way. We are, us and our little, I hate to use the word demonic, but I don't know how else to describe Israel. Us and our little bastard child, Israel, we are the biggest terrorists on the planet. Make no mistake. We're the ones who make terrorists. Now, who taught us? Britain, of course. Britain taught us. The British Empire. That was our father, so to speak. And they did it fantastically. And then when they couldn't do it anymore, they got the United States to do it for them, and they did it through the United States. Why? Because of the Bank of England, because of the debt system, because of the Rothschilds, because you don't need a constitution and a Bill of Rights will take you so far. But if you can enslave a nation in debt, I mean, you still have a nation of slaves. They have to go to work every day. They have to do even what they don't want to do. They pretend to live on land they own, but if you don't pay your taxes, you're going to jail. How is that your land? That's not ownership. That sounds a lot like what was going on in England when we left for America. Why? Because they didn't want to pay the royal families to lease their land, farm the fields, and give them everything. What do? Half your paycheck gets sucked into the black hole that is the government. Nobody says nothing. Nobody's up in arms about it. We didn't even have an income tax until 100 years ago. Why did we have one? Because of war. So if you're the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the Morgans and these families, and there are dozens of them, and you consolidate power and wealth when you can get a nation to go to war with another, do you think that these families waited around for a big conflict to break out? No! They used their resources to make the conflict happen. Whether it took them decades or years, when you have endless resources, you can manipulate men to any end. And they do, and they have. And every global war we've had has not been a product of human nature or even national pride or democracy or saving this person or these people. None of them, not even a tiny bit. I'd like to know why they were cast out of different countries years ago. I can't find anything. I mean, if you're talking about the persecution of the Jewish people, they were cast out because usury was considered against both Christian and Islamic law. And the people who tended to use banking in a usury fashion, in other words, read The Merchant of Venice, that's about, there's a character in it called Shylock. He's Jewish, in case you don't know anything about Shakespeare. Um, and 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 he's in the whole drama unfolds because he has lent a man in great distress a lot of money for a lot of interest, and that was frowned upon. And when he didn't get paid back, he demanded flesh. He demanded, because the deal was, he's like, I'll do anything. I'll pay you in flesh if I have to. And the Shylock took the deal, and he demanded the weight in gold in this man's flesh, which is what he was owed. But you see, they were kicked out because they were not allowed to do what it was they were very much oriented towards doing business, and that is loaning money for interest. That was against both Christian and Islamic law for the longest time. Of course, the Bank of England, changed that in Britain. The Church of England changed a lot of things too. Those two go hand in hand. And then they got to America, and they just went to work. They finally conned Congress, and the American people tricked them into saying, listen, you're going to need money for war, right? Okay, you don't have enough. We do. Me, the Warburgs, the Rockefellers, the Morgans, we have enough. We actually have more money combined than you do. So why don't you just let us handle your money supply? Well, fuck, we do need money for war, right? Yeah. You're going to need money for war in just a few days, JP Morgan said. And he was right, because he was the one who sent his ship, the Lusitania, which was a cargo vessel, to get torpedoed by U-boats in Germany, who was fighting Britain. That's another live stream, guys. But my point is, how did we get from faith to the Lusitania, and knowledge to World War I? Oh yeah, I forgot. I was talking about, yeah. So I was referring to the fact that, yeah, and they are still doing it, which is why you need to know. Which is why it's so important to do something to expand your consciousness, because the expansion of consciousness will lead you to greater perception, greater feeling, greater empathy, greater understanding. And all these lies that we're told about our existence and our nature, they will fall away, and you'll be able to see like you haven't before. But if you don't have a practice that expands your consciousness, whatever it is, meditation, yoga, psychedelics in the right set and setting, whatever it is, something that will quiet your ego long enough for you to realize what you are a part of, and that is everything and anything, the very fabric of this existence and creation. That's what we all are. That's what we all have in common, right? But if you don't think about that, if you aren't aware of that, how can you experience it? And so what I wanted to talk to you guys tonight about specifically is shifting from this hoping and why. And hope is fine. Listen, hope is fine. And James just gave us a great acronym, if only I can remember it. Helping other people evolve. Hope is good for that, right? But hope will leave you separate from that thing, that object, whatever it is, that dream, that intention, whatever your objective is, whatever you're hoping for. Hoping leaves you inherently separate from it. Why? Because why would you be hoping for it if you already had it? Psychedelics. Yeah. Right? So do you understand that the difference is like night and day? The difference is, if you know, and you can know with, listen, if you can know with such conviction, then that thing is your reality is going to bend to that knowledge, period. I mean, how do you think the 4-minute mile was ran? They said it was impossible for I don't know how many years. And somebody was like, I think I can do it. I believe it's possible for me. And they said, no, it's not possible. The human biology keeps it from being possible. And then somebody broke the 4-minute mile. And since then, thousands of people have broken the 4-minute mile. You know, and that is within our capacity because our beliefs shape our abilities. So if you're stuck hoping and supplicating and asking and praying, then you're staying separate and you're not using the divine spark that God put in you to create your own reality. It's not God's duty to try to clean up the mess that you've made with your life. Do you understand? So you can, you know, screw up all week and then go to church on Sunday. And nothing's going to change for you. That's not why you're here. You're here to experience the Creator in you. You know, and there doesn't need to be any judgment in it, but you do need to take responsibility for your inherent power. And because when the Bible says, and you hear things like, we are created in His image, that's the image we are created in. We have the ability to create life. And sadly, all we've been doing is creating a lot of death. But that can change with a mindset shift. You know, this world is in great chaos and upheaval, but the more upheaval that we see, the more people we see finally saying, hey, enough is enough. And maybe that's what we need, guys. Maybe that's what we need, because I see more people standing up, at least in Australia and Spain and other countries. At least they're gathering by the tens of thousands and demanding Israel stop. America is still on its fat, lazy ass doing nothing for the most part. We have people very vocal on social media, and sometimes we even get together and walk a bridge, but for the most part, we haven't seen enough, apparently. We haven't seen enough children mutilated, amputees, dead, you know. And I don't know if we ever will. And again, that is very much by design. That is the part of the wool that's been pulled over our eyes, because they have conditioned us to imagine that our voices don't count, that we don't have the power to change the world. And that is bullshit. Don't you believe that for a second. That is not true. This world would never change if everyone believed that. And this world has only ever changed because the individual first knew he was capable of changing it, and then others came with him. And that's part of what I'm talking to you guys about. You know, taking our sovereignty back means knowing, not believing, knowing that we can change the world, because it is within our power. And the change starts right here. There is only the individual. I just talked with, my God, the living legend, 93-year-old, his last name is Griffin, R. Edward Griffin. Wait, what does the R stand for? He's like, you guys have seen his face. He's been around forever. He wrote the book, the Creature at Jekyll Island. He wrote the book on the Federal Reserve. This dude is 93. I'm telling you, I could talk to him for hours. He's sharp as a tack. But we were just talking about this, you know, and he was talking about these families. He's like, what else can you call them? He's like, I don't like to use the word evil. I was like, yeah, me either. But he was like, G. Edward Griffin. Thank you, polymath. G. Edward Griffin. If you haven't read his book on the Federal Reserve, and you want to understand why our money system is literally a debt enslavement system designed by some of the most nefarious and powerful families on the planet, and why it's working so well, not so wrongly, like, oh, $37 trillion in debt. Somebody's really screwed up. No, that is exactly what the Federal Reserve was designed to do. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to. It's enslaving the world, because we're not the only nation in debt. In fact, there isn't a nation that's not in debt, period. This is what they do. This is how they control the world. So we need to free ourselves and find a way to take our sovereignty back. And G. Edward Griffin has plans. So like when you watch this podcast, it's going to come out in either 2 or 3 weeks. My man He's got the blueprint down. He knows how we can change the system. He's been at this. He was born in 1931, I think. Wait, yeah, 1931. He's 93 years old. That's how long he's been at this, right? But he knows how we can change the system, and he puts everything out on his thing for free. You guys will have to check it out. Keep an eye out. If you're not subscribed, I know my YouTube listeners are mostly subscribed. If you guys on Instagram are not subscribed to my YouTube channel, then you're going to miss this incredible podcast I did with this guy. He's a living legend. It was so cool to talk to him. He's still so sharp. He invited me to the Red Pill Expo, which I think it was out west, but I had other plans and I didn't make it. I'm probably missing all kinds of comments here. Let me see here. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, hold on. Do you think they'll pay? You guys know the debt is never going to be paid off, right? Have to keep the pop down so they don't learn the true grifts. Indeed. Let me see. Facts. What else did I miss? Sorry, guys. I'm trying to catch up with these comments. Let me see. Usury. Okay, that's right. All right. I see where we are now. Consciousness. Okay. It's all connected. That's right, truency. I'm almost caught up here. Let me see. Is Cairo a special place spiritually? I don't know, Franklin. I know that Egypt definitely is. You know, there are places all over the world that are very special. The normalization of shock and awe. That's right, truency. So you guys, they want you to believe that we live in a Darwinistic planet, which, do you ever notice that Darwin's lessons are kind of the corporate mandate in America and now spread throughout the world? It's a dog-eat-dog world, survival of the fittest. What is the corporate mantra the United States espouses? Profits over people, you know, and that's why, you know, corporations aren't criminally culpable. That's why there's you know, you can sue them, but you can't sue the individuals. You know, it's a disaster what we have done, and that comes from fascism, right? Fascism, originally the word fascism meant control by the corporate, by the state, right? Now we just throw that word around. It's almost as thrown around as the word anti-Semitic, which makes it kind of useless. But that's what has happened. Our country has been hijacked, you know, by the families that own the industries. And sadly, the military and industrial complex is at the top of the list. Of course, the medical industrial complex is competing very well with it. It's like war, pandemic. No. It's a race. Who can profit the most first? And so they take turns. Did you notice they take turns? What were we doing in 2020? What happened after 2020? Right? Oh, well, after 2020, we had Ukraine. After Afghanistan. What was before Afghanistan? Iraq. Then we had 9/11. Then we had the housing bubble. Like, do you understand? It's all orchestrated, all of it, by a corrupt, wayward, nefarious, useless government. And anyone still watching the news or believing that politics is the answer is not paying well enough attention. There is no politician who can solve this. Even if he wanted to, it is too far gone. So either we have to replace everyone in Congress so that we actually have, you know, remove the money, remove the lobbying, and really make it what it was supposed to be, servants of the people. Stop teaching our kids we live in a democracy and all this happy horse shit, which is not even close to true. We live in a constitutional republic, which is a far, far cry from a democracy. G. Edward Griffin rehashed this with me. He is an expert on this, right? What's the difference, right? The difference is, in a democracy, mob rules. In a democracy, the needs and demands of the majority will always outweigh the needs and demands of the individual. And that's not what this country was formed for. So in the end, you have what is called collectivism versus individualism. And that is the only struggle that is actually happening right now. Every false flag, every conspiracy quote theory, every hoax, whether it be 2020, whether it be carbon, fucking carbon, that thing that we need, that thing that we're made out of. How the fuck did they convince people, intelligent people, that carbon is the enemy? I mean, it just blows my mind. It's really hard to understand how people could buy into such incredible idiocy because people don't know better and they believe what they're told. And guess what? They know that human beings care about the planet. They know we care about our children. They know we have biological programs in us that are going to make us want to courageously stand up and say, I'm not going to let this happen. We're going to get rid of carbon any way we can. There's a nobility in that. There's a nobility in activism. I'm not knocking the people who are trying to save the planet. The planet does need saving. But we don't have a carbon problem. We have a fucking corruption problem. Period. The problem lies in this country being run into the ground by psychopaths and sociopaths and maniacs, some of whom would just as happily see us all dead so they would have less people to try to manage. And I say that literally. These are the kinds of people who we have allowed to take the highest office in our country. Dick Cheney, George Bush, not W. W was a jackass. His father, I mean, Kennedy tried to do something about it, and it didn't work out for him. And since then, it's been downhill. He was the last one that tried to make true changes, that had the power to try to make true changes. He should have been a lot more careful and a lot less trusting. And then maybe he could have done some real good. Besides just leave himself a martyr and a legend, because who's done it since? Ike warned him. Kennedy tried to do something about it. Nothing has happened since. There hasn't been one single president that has been able to outmaneuver. Really, none have even attempted to. Probably, I would say the only exception would be Trump, but he is an abject failure. He hasn't been able to outmaneuver anything. I like him, but he's owned and operated by who? By Israel. So what can he do? I mean, if you can't see that this nation is killing children every day, and you won't speak up about it, and you have an entire Congress and Senate, the majority of which refuse to even recognize it, and you have senators like Lindsey Graham who are absolutely out of their mind. Even Marjorie, what's her name? Green, Taylor, the one that we all know is, when she's the only one speaking up and making sense, the whole world has gone upside down. Right? I mean, how else do you describe the times we're living? Okay, let me see some questions here. We need to raise our vibration. Truency, you said you got that right. Let me see here. 90% of our jobs are made of bullshit. That's right, Kate. And there's a trap inherent in that, guys. You could call it a leap of faith. That's the only time I like to use the word faith. If we're going to leap it, right? Because people are working in jobs they feel trapped in. They're staying in relationships they feel stuck in, and no one wants to take a chance. And that's because we've been conditioned to fear the unknown. But every opportunity the universe, aka God, aka Source, whatever your preferred nomenclature is, every opportunity lives outside of your known comfort zone. And most people are just going about their lives every day, creating the same outcomes from either the familiar past, the same decisions that went on yesterday, or a very predictable future. They have left no room for surprises, none. And if you do the same damn thing every day, and you're quietly hoping for change, how can anything change for you if you aren't doing anything differently? You have to embody the change. You have to be the change. Neil Donald Walsh taught me that better than anyone. What's your favorite song artist to listen to for meditation? Polymath. So, my God, I love, what's his name? Wish I had, if I didn't have every device I have recording, I could check. So he did a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditations. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna write in the comments who my favorites are, because I have more than one, and all their names are escaping me. But my favorite meditations are certainly Dr. Joe Dispenza's. He's my go-to. He's who I do every day, and he's got a few of them are free on YouTube if you want to scope them out, and then the rest of them are for sale. He does work with true composers. He's very gifted, and he's got a meditation for every single thing that you could want, including abundance, including health, including energy, including change, including flow. You know, so there's really something for every day. When I meditate, I do it with intention. You know, yeah, I do it to tune into nothing so that I can be filled with things like this that I can share with you, thoughts, ideas about what I think might help and serve my human family. That comes to me when I quiet my mind. But then after I quiet it and I slow my heart rate down, then I can reprogram with what I want to see show up in my life. Because I know that's our greatest gift, is our free will and our ability to create. And so that's what I do with my meditation. I quiet and I allow what needs to come in, and then I set the blueprint for what I want to see in my life. And that is true prayer, my friends. That is how prayer is supposed to work. But you know, if you're Catholic like I was, then you're taught that praying is what? It's even less effective than hoping, because all you're doing is begging. And what could you be more separate from than something you're begging for? Something you feel you need that you do not have. Those are the hardest things to get, right? You have to tune into and know that what you're asking for is already here. And that's very hard for people to do. That's true faith. No hope needed, no belief needed, right? That's the power of manifesting. And you're doing it anyway, whether you realize it or not. Most of you are doing it completely unconsciously. And that's why shit seems so random, you know, because you're subject to what can be called random, because you and everyone else, you're not creating. You don't have a vision of the future that you're stepping into. It doesn't have to be super specific. It can be a feeling. Maybe it's freedom. You know, I had a dear friend say, you know, I never thought I had to hang up with money, but I never wanted to spend it. And I was like, well, why not? Because there's a fear there. There's a fear that if she spends it, she may not get it again. And that's the underlying feeling. Now, if she could feel into the fact that she already has everything she needs, and be grateful for that, then that will become the predominant signal she's putting out. Now, Abraham Hicks teaches about this. She writes books about it. It's called the law of attraction. And people think it's woo-woo, but it's not. It's science. It's called the law of resonance. And it has its roots in science. If you have a tuning fork and you bang it, and then you hold another tuning fork up to it, what's going to happen to that tuning fork? They're going to synchronize. And if one is too fast than the other, then they're going to repel. That is the law of attraction. You are a walking tuning fork, whether you want to admit it or not. And you're always putting out a vibe. That's why some people are like, man, he's got such good vibes. I love being around him. Or she's so sweet. Everywhere she's just so fun to be around. And then other people are like, God, he's a fucking asshole. Just can't stand being around him. It's brooding and it's just fucking, you know, always sarcastic, cynical. You know, like that's the energy they're putting out. That's their personality, and it's the energy they're putting out. And it affects everything around them. People don't want to be around them. Why? Because if they're around them too much, what happens? Then they start to feel like them. Or they like being around them because when they're around them, they're like, hey, he's so funny. You can go anywhere with him or her. We like to be around those people because of the energy they're putting out. It affects us. You can extrapolate what I just said across everything. That is the nature of our existence. It's cause and effect. Most people are leaving themselves subject to the law of cause and effect. And that is the greatest and only universal law. And just because you have been unable to correlate the shit that happens in your life with the shit that you have done with your thoughts, feelings, and actions, doesn't mean that you aren't creating your own reality. It's just, you just haven't figured out how yet. And so everything feels like it's happening to you. But you don't realize you're the one making it happen. You're responsible. And the people who realize that, who take responsibility for that, they begin to cause an effect instead of being subject to cause and effect. Do you hear the difference? Causing an effect and being subject to cause and effect. I personally prefer to cause an effect. I just, why leave it to chance? I mean, the things I leave to chance are all good. Do you understand? I leave things open. I love being surprised, but I want to create. I have a vision of my future, and I know what it entails, and I want to create it. I'm not gonna hope that it comes around. I'm not gonna have I'm gonna believe in it, but I'm gonna manifest it into existence with my knowledge that it's already there. It's already happened for me. Whether it be tomorrow or in 10 years, I know it's coming. And it's my conviction that is going to bring it into reality. It's my without a shadow of a doubt, I know, right? And who needs hope? Who even needs belief if you know, right? And that's, do you guys see my, check this out. I don't know where I found this. Isn't this cool? I love that. And it's battery powered and you can bring it places. I don't know. It's so hard. Put it like that. Anyway, let me read my comments and chat with you guys a little bit and see what's up. Let me see here. Okay, let me see. Where are we? All right, let me see. Patch me into the feed. I'd love to enlighten some of your fans. Sorry, Scott. Not going to do that, bud. Why don't you build your own channel and following, and then you can broadcast anything you like. Anyway, you don't live in a constitutional republic till you free yourself from the straw man. I agree, man. I agree. Honor Monkey, thank you for staying with me. You live in the United... That's right. We live in the United States, the corporate United States. That's exactly right. And that's a whole nother live stream, my friend. We can get into that, too. We have a tree cutting addiction. You know where that comes from, right? So, say what you want about Henry Ford. He was very, very cool to his employees. Very, very cool. Yeah, he supported Hitler and he was outspoken against our Jewish people, which, was a mistake, but you shouldn't stereotype anyone, okay? Period. And Henry Ford fell into that trap. Anyway, he was very good to his employees. He was sued by Dodge for treating his employees so well. They were like, listen, if he's allowed to get away with this, we're not going to have any employees, right? True story. So my point is, Henry Ford created a car out of hemp and cannabis. And this was before cannabis. So if you want to understand why cannabis was made illegal in the United States, it didn't have anything to do with their care about people smoking weed or selling weed or Mexicans and all this bullshit. It's because Henry Ford built a car that was made entirely of and ran on hemp, cannabis. And of course, you can make polymers from cannabis that are stronger than steel to this day. And up until then, almost all the paper in the world was written on hemp. But the Rockefellers and the Morgans and the other families, well, they had their roots much firmer in the government. The Rockefellers went to work. They bastardized hemp. And the way they did that was demonizing cannabis. And so cannabis was made illegal. And that rippled throughout the world. And that's why, we've been chopping down the rainforests. It's the same families responsible for the atrocities that have been committed on our trees and all this, because they made hemp a dirty word. Because what? What was their industries based off of? Plastic, synthetics, petroleum-based everything. They needed the cars to be built on things that they could get, not something that people can grow. Same thing with alcohol. Do you think the Prohibition was about morality? Do you think the United States gives two fucks about morality? I mean, I don't even know how those two things get in the same sentence. This is the same United States who would then go on to poison the alcohol to punish the people for not following the law that was created, not because they cared about people were drinking, but because farmers figured out they could use alcohol for fuel. And they weren't about to pay, the Rockefellers and all these families for gas when they could make it themselves. So what had to happen? Alcohol was made illegal, and we had the era of Prohibition. And then they used Prohibition to usher in the mafia and intertwine that with the intelligence agencies. And the two go hand in hand, and they always have. Another trick we learned from Britain. But yeah, what else you guys got for me, huh? I'm running out of juice here. Bush Sr. was bad. Bush Sr. was the worst of the worst. I don't like to throw religious terms around like the devil, but man, he was a psychopath among psychopaths. That dude, he was such a pile of corrupt poop that you remember Ross Perot, right? Ross Perot, he was a billionaire, right? So what happens when a billionaire has a conscience, right? This is a kind of cool little dichotomy that happened. Ross Perot found out what George Bush was doing. He didn't find out to the extent he needed to, but he found out a lot, and he had a problem with it. And guess what? He was a billionaire, and so he couldn't just be forced to be quiet. He could not be handled the way someone without his type of power and money and influence could. So what did he do? He threw his money into the campaign. He ran against George Bush. If only he could have came out and said what he knew about George Bush. But, even that he was hesitant to do. But there was an agent called Chip Tatum who George Bush would always go to. These guys were, CIA. They were basically assassins. And almost all their work was done in South America and overseas, and that was part of what they did. And then one day, Herbert Walker Bush went to Chip Tatum and said, I want you to take care of a domestic problem. And Chip was like, what kind, And he said, Ross Perot. And that's when Chip Tatum didn't say anything, but Chip Tatum walked away. He collected a massive amount of evidence, created the most elaborate dead man switch you've ever heard of. Fucking brilliant. Kept his ass alive. To this day, he's still alive. George Bush, Chip Tatum wrote a letter to Ross Perot warning him that George Bush put a hit out on him. How fucking crazy is that? He had to write a letter to him. And he told George Bush he no longer was going to do this. He was like, look, every person who I was sent to terminate, I was convinced was for the best of my country. When this assignment was given to me, I realized that I had been used, I had been played, and he walked away from it. And he collected so much evidence. So first they tried to throw him in prison, right? And then when they got the dead man switch, they said, the dead man switch was like, look, I have all this evidence. I have it in all these places. And if they don't hear from me every, I think it was 4 months, then they're going to release it to all these places. And so they had him arrested for bullshit, like they always do. Had him thrown in prison, and they put a hit on him. And then then they saw the dead man's trigger, they call it. And they had to pull him out of prison because they didn't want him to get killed. Anyway, he's managed to stay alive to this day. I'm trying to get him on my podcast, but he's hard to get a hold of. Anyway, let me see. What else you guys got for me here? Let me see. Okay, Yeah, Majorie Green, speaking the truth. Okay, focus on truth. 24/7, unfortunately. James, keep at it, bud. You can only get better at it the more conscious you are and the more conscious you do it, right? Let me see what else. Dodge said shareholder, that's right. So when Dodge sued Ford for how well he was treating his employees, he said that the shareholders, he sued them because Ford had created a way for his employees to retain equity and to save their money. And the Dodge brothers said that's not what a company is for. It's for the shareholders. The shareholders have to be the priority. And Ford was in opposition to that, and Ford lost in court. The Dodge brothers won. It tells you a lot about our court system and who it's set up for. It didn't. The people didn't win out. The shareholders did, and sadly, that's still the case to this day. But let me see here. My eyes are going crossed, guys. My toothpaste is hemp. Nice. Okay. They have removed any info about this. Oh, I went to the Ford Museum in Detroit, and I don't remember seeing Carmen. So, James, I did a short about it. I got to dig it up, man. I did a short about it. When I read it, in a book that I was reading about Mina, Arkansas, and Bill Clinton. I don't know how this ended up in this book. It was like it was like 2 pages of this book, but they were talking about Bill Clinton and the crime, the $100 million of cocaine he was running through Mina, Arkansas for months with George Herbert Walker Bush and company. The whole Iran-Contra affair and just a little bit of criminal activity that goes on with our presidents. Yeah. You guys watch that special? You should watch that special. It's on YouTube. Listen, if you guys like my work and you want to support me, I have a Patreon page. I'm trying to build a community of like-minded, truth-seeking, spiritual individuals. And I'm trying to build a support system. So if you like my work and you enjoy these, please check that out. We have all kinds of cool tiers. We love making customized merch for people. My channel has the coolest logo maybe ever. I don't know if you've seen it, the Far Out with FAUST logo. We do a lot of things with that, but Instagram has me on an hour timer for apparently I posted something they didn't like, so I'm being punished. So I have 2 minutes left, and then they start their countdown. It's so stupid. I don't know what I did, but hopefully it won't last very long. Let me see what else I got. Listen, I want to thank everyone who's joining me on YouTube. Appreciate you guys. I want to try to be more consistent. I'm going to do a live stream both on Instagram and YouTube every Saturday night. I'm going to try to do one maybe on, there goes my countdown. Less than 2 minutes remaining. Censorship, freedom of speech, not reach. That's crazy, right? I didn't even do anything. I don't know. They used to do this all the time. Okay. I'm sorry, guys. I'm out of time. We'll go. Oh, thank you, Pam. Listen, thank you, guys. Don't keep the faith. Know you got what it takes right in your heart. Use your heart and your mind to create the reality that you want. And then you won't need faith and you won't need hope because you'll realize that it's already happened for you, and it has. So I want to thank you guys so much for joining me. Much love to you guys. Listen, love is the answer. Love is the absolute solution. If we can remember that we are all souls and that we are all love, life becomes a lot easier and everything happens a lot easier for us. And if everyone could remember that, this world would change overnight. And don't think for a second that it doesn't matter what you think and what you do and what you say and how you act in this world, because you affect everyone around you. So I want to send you all my love. God bless you guys and your family. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend wherever you are. And thank you so much for joining in to my live stream. Much love to you guys. If I can end this, I don't know how to end this.